Hey everyone, Pastor Daniel here. It's my turn to lead our weekly devotional. I'm really glad you're with me today. Yesterday we were blessed to celebrate Palm Sunday together as a church, and not only our church, but churches and Christians all over the world gathered to remember and reflect upon that fateful and remarkable moment when our Savior entered the city of Jerusalem. It's quite a scene. He rides in on a donkey. The people are lining the streets and they're waving their palm branches back and forth, and they're crying out with their voices, Hosanna, Hosanna, which means, Lord, save us, Lord, rescue us. And not only were they worshiping with their voices and with the palm branches, they had gone before Jesus and they had laid out their cloaks and their garments on the ground so that the animal that Christ was riding in on, so its feet would not touch the earth. It is quite the scene of respect and honor. It's a scene of celebration. Christ entered the city under incredible pomp and circumstance. The energy is in the air. You can just feel it. This is Palm Sunday, the fateful beginning of Holy Week that we celebrated yesterday. Today, it's Monday. We have a name for this particular day of the week for Holy Week, and it's Holy Monday. So why are we calling it Holy Monday? The Gospel of Mark gives us a great reason for us to refer to this day as holy. Chapter 11 of his great Gospel, and the 12th verse, gives us some information that I think is so incredible. It's just this little wording that gives us a glimpse and just pulls the curtain back into what was going on with Christ on Palm Sunday, so we can see what happened on that Monday. We get the feeling that maybe Christ entered the city a little late in the day, or that time had just passed by quickly, because we're told that Christ would leave Jerusalem and he would not stay the night there. He would want to go to another town close by called Bethany, where he had friends. And he would stay in Bethany that night so he could rest and get his mind and his heart and his body ready for the week ahead. It was going to be grueling. It was going to be draining for him. And so he heads out to Bethany to get some much needed rest. So that's where Mark picks up in chapter 11, verse 12. He says this: the next morning, so this is Monday, he says they were leaving Bethany and Jesus was hungry. He noticed a fig tree in full leaf, and it was a way off. So he went over to see if he could find any figs on the tree, but there were only leaves on the tree and no figs, because it was too early in the season for fruit. And then Jesus said to the tree, "May no one ever eat of your fruit again." And his disciples heard him say this. Mark will tell us later in chapter 11 and verse 20 that the next day, so Tuesday, the next day, they are passing by this very fig tree that Jesus had cursed. And the disciples, they see that it's dead, that it's destroyed, that it's completely dried up and withered up. And then Peter remembered the words that Jesus had said. And he says, "Look, Rabbi, teacher," he's getting Jesus' attention. He says, Look what happened to the tree that you cursed. It's withered and it's died." What a Monday miracle, right? That's a good start to the Monday, right? I mean, this is a miracle that is quite shocking from, just the history of what Christ has done for others as he's done his ministry. Everything that he's done at that point has been about life and restoration and healing. And here he uses his power to destroy something. He uses his power to curse something. It's quite remarkable. It is, as I've heard many say, it's a reverse miracle. It's contrary to what Christ had done previously. And then right after Christ has cursed this fig tree, he doesn't stop there. He goes directly into the temple, his Father's house, and he begins to drive out the people that had taken the temple and made it into something that it was never intended to be. He turns over their tables and He's driving out the money changers, and he tells them that this is a house of prayer, and you have made it something that it was never, ever intended to be. If there's anything about these two stories from Mark chapter 11, it shows us that Jesus cares about holiness. Jesus cares about us being real. And in a world that we live in that is infatuated with appearance, we are ate up with how we look and how others perceive us, our reputation. This story shows us that holiness matters, that being real matters, that righteousness is a real thing. Think about this fig tree for a moment. It looks good. It's showing the world that it's green, but under closer examination, it wasn't healthy at all. When Jesus pulled the leaves back, there was nothing to it. There was no fruit to it. It was just a facade. It looked healthy, and it had others deceived, but it had no fruit. And I love that Mark said that it didn't have fruit because it wasn't the season for fruit, but this tree was still acting like it was supposed to have fruit. It was pretending that it should have fruit. And that is why Christ cursed it, because it looked the part, but it really wasn't the part. The temple, this holy, righteous thing that God had set up for specific things, had become something that had never, ever meant to become. And so Jesus corrected that with his holiness and with his righteousness. And so today, I lay that at your feet. I'm asking us to think about our lives. Are you faking it? Do you have people believing things about yourself that are not true? Maybe you have the world full that you are, you have it all together, and that you are maybe more than you really say that you are spiritually. But under closer examination, when you pull the leaves back of your life, there's just nothing really there. Looks healthy, but there's just no fruit. Maybe you look at your heart today as a temple, and you consider, what have I set up in my heart that needs to be turned over? What have I allowed to be placed in my heart that needs to be driven out? This is the message of Holy Monday. Christ cares about our purity. Christ cares about us doing things the right way. Christ does not want us to fake it. Christ does not want us to look the part. Christ wants us to actually be the part. We get our holiness and our righteousness from him. And I pray today that on this Holy Monday, we can be real, because Christ is real to and for us. I love you so much. Have a great Holy Monday and a great rest of the Holy Week ahead.